Hey everyone, welcome to the Walk to Wealth podcast. If you're tuning in on YouTube, make sure to give us a follow and a subscribe so that you can never ever miss a beat. I'm bringing some heat all 2023. Without further ado, let's get right into this episode. We got Dave here. Dave, for anyone that may not know you, tell us your elevator pitch. Who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, so my name is Dave Valentine. I own 8 different companies, 6 of which are doing 7 figures or more. And I help in everything that I do. I help small businesses and individuals make more money. That's really my game.
Amazing, Dave. I had the pleasure to get to know you a little bit behind the scenes before we hopped on to record today. But for our audience, tell us a little bit about your walk to wealth. I think I want to start. What was money like growing up in your household? You helped a lot of people reach a level of income that most people can only dream of. But what was it like growing up back when you were, just a little Dave growing up and still in diapers running around in toddler years?
Yeah, I had the privilege of watching my parents struggle to make financial ends meet when we were growing up. And then the real turning point, which was awesome to watch, happened when I was junior in high school. And I remember exactly the moment. We'd been living in a nice house. However, my dad got stationed at a new spot. He was in the Air Force at the time. And I remember the house that we got. And it was like this ostentatious display of wealth. It was really impressive. And so I had in my mind pretty early on, as a high school kid, junior high kid, whatever, that if you work hard, you stick with it, you keep going, you'll get there eventually. I was given a gift by my parents. They always told me, and I really would grind my gears in junior high and high school. I'm so grateful that they taught me this now. They're like, you never quit on things, Dave. We just don't, as a family, we don't quit things. And there were times where I wanted to quit things in school. We were talking about athletics before we hit record. There were times where I had a coach that was just not fun to play under, right? And my parents were like,
Yeah.
you can't quit. You already said yes. You're going to do it. You're going to see it through. And so that all kind of revolved around my idea of money, was that it was a thing that was always accessible. Even if you don't have it right now, it will come to you. My parents now are in the top 1% of income earners. And they weren't like that when I was a kid. I mean, we really struggled. And my brothers didn't get to see the same level of struggle. And it's interesting, they have a different mindset towards money than I do. My youngest brother, for example, he never saw my parents struggle, so he just assumes you just have money.
Yeah.
And my middle brother and I saw it enough. I'm the oldest of three, that we understand the value of having it, right? What does it mean to have financial resources? It means comfort. It means getting what you want. It means getting to go where you want to go. So that was my early introduction to how money was handled and what I kind of saw growing up as a kid.
You mentioned something in there that I really hope no one just casually glanced over. You said you had the privilege to watch your parents struggle, and the just your mindset and perspective around that. So many people would see it as a entirely negative thing, like money was hard. We grew up very humbly and tough times and stuff like that, and they would just see it as something negative. What made you was your mindset always around that opportunity? I mean, around that situation, that it was a privilege, or as you got older, you reflected and realized that it was a privilege? Because most people in that situation would just be like, "Oh, we don't have any money. Life sucks. The world's evil. Top one percenters hate us, and blah blah blah, and all this jazz around money." So, when did you make that connection that that was actually one of probably the biggest blessings, being able to see struggle firsthand?
I don't think that I understood that it was a blessing until I was in college in my early 20s. I realized it when I got married young. I was one of those rare people that I got married when I was 21. My wife was 20. We're still together, by the way. We still really like
Amazing.
and love each other. Picking your partner is of the utmost importance, your romantic partner. So just an encouragement, take that seriously. And if you know that they're the one, then just go for it. Like, you'll figure it out. Anyways, we had to start working. We were juniors in college. We were taking a full load of work. And I was just driven. I was driven to not stay where we were. And that ultimately led a few years later, just, I mean, wow. only 4 years after that, when we got married, to starting my first adult business. Because I said to my wife at the time, I was like, I'd been working for other people in house in marketing departments, and she really wanted to come be full time at home with our kids that we didn't have yet. She wasn't even pregnant. And I knew that that was the thing that she really wanted. So we talked about what's the fastest way to get there. And I was like, I think the fastest way to get there is for me to start my own company. Like, I'm not going to elevate myself enough within a company to get where I want to go, unless I want to go back and get my master's and really pursue the traditional route. And I'm not a traditional person.
Yeah.
So I had a good friend last week say to me, because I took a personality test, and she said, "You are literally in this test off the charts in how casual you are." I told her, I was like, I think I'm going to add that to every social media like profile I have. So anyways, I had this understanding though when we were kids, like it was part of my job was to not see it as a terminal illness. That the lack of money was A, not something that I had control over, that was on my parents. B, my parents always told me, my dad was really good about talking about how much he made and how much he was going to make and what that meant when he got the next promotion and how that all went down. And so I never saw it as permanent. I always saw it as this is what's happening right now. I remember the time when he told me I'm making six figures, and it was like the first time. I can't remember the exact date. He was in his early 30s. I do remember how old I was. I can reverse engineer that a little bit. He must have been 34, 35. So as a mindset, I was like, I have to be making six figures before that, right? Not to compete with my dad, just understanding how inflation works. Like
Yeah.
if he was making 100K at 35, I probably need to make at least 100K by 30. And so
Yeah.
there was just this understanding, this openness of conversation of how money was going in the household. It was never something that was taboo. It was something that was discussed regularly. I watched my mom work night shifts on the weekend, 2.5 hours away from where we lived for a while, and commute back and forth because she was making 3 times the money 2.5 hours away that she could be making at our house. And so it was in that struggle that I really noticed, hey, this is part and parcel of how you get where you want to go.
Yeah, and amazing. And it's witnessing that firsthand is super inspiring and must have been such a big blessing. 'Cause a lot of time, and especially in my household, money was never talked about. Money was always something that was super tight. And so it's like having the opportunity. And for those of you that are listening right now, if you're in a household where money, even if it's mentioned briefly, just know that you're in a household that is definitely not the majority. Because in most households, especially when money is tight, it just gets swept under a rug. And I wanted to ask you a question back into getting married earlier, because I'm in a situation when I'm in a relationship right now, but I'm also still in the very
Congrats.
beginning of situations. Thank you. It's been we actually, from the time that we're recording, 2 weeks from tomorrow makes 2 years. So
Wow. Well done,
it's been
John. Well
yeah,
done,
thank
brother.
you, man. I think I think I got a pretty good eye. I got when I locked my eyes on this one. I think I made a very good choice. So, but I
I
wanted to
love that,
ask you
man.
because starting an entrepreneurship is insanely hard. And
Mhm.
getting in a relationship now, especially now with all these dating profile apps and online dating and all that jazz and all this stuff and promiscuity and all these different factors that are at play all at the same time. It's like dating itself is extremely hard, especially getting married now. It's getting statistically more and more difficult to have a successful marriage. And statistically speaking, it's already extremely difficult to start a business. So, like, how did you navigate that at just in your 20s, man? Like, how did you do it?
Yeah, it helps to have a shared vision, right? Like, where are you going together? It can't be John's vision. It can't be Dave's vision. It's got to be a unified vision between you and your romantic partner. That's number one, right? So you can understand there's a relational understanding when you go, hey, I have to work late tonight. The other partner doesn't take that personally. They see that as an honoring of the relationship, an honoring of the vision that you've crafted together. So my wife and I would have regular vision board sessions. We'd put out, like, where do we want to live? What kind of house? How many kids do we want to have? What animals do we want, if any? How much money do we expect to be making? And we'd put dates on it. And that gave us focus. It gave us the ability to say yes to things and no to a lot. It also allowed us to really understand what we were up to, right? So, like, instead of saying things like, hey, we're going to go on a date that's out and about, we had financial goals. So we're like, we'll do a date in house. We'll make it romantic. We'll light candle. And this was after I was making good money. I mean, this is
Mhm.
still a thing we do. We usually only go out once a month, and I make tons of money.
Yeah.
But we don't do that because we realize for us, we'd rather save $1,000 a month having really nice, because we have 3 kids. We have to go, we got to get a babysitter. We got to take the car out. We're going to drive in. So there's like all these things that get added to the expense of that. And we do like to do that on occasion. It's just understanding where it is that we're going. And similar to you, John, we're invested in real estate offerings. We're invested in 8 different businesses. We've diversified our assets so much. And part of that logic is we save our money so that we can go invest it in something else, because that's part of the game. That being said, when it comes to like, hey, how do you find that partner? Yeah, it is different than it was 15 years ago. And it's the same, right? There's going to be people that you meet that are serious. They're like, I want to get married sooner rather than later. There are going to be people that aren't serious. They want to play, they want to have fun, and that's okay too. You just have to know the difference. And I'll say this: dating can be a drug, just like alcohol or marijuana or anything else. And I've seen men and women put their careers, put their businesses in bad positions because they wanted to date the field. And it became their full time job to be on dating apps. And
Yeah.
it's not helpful. So you have to really think, what do you want? And for me, in my life, because I am so dynamic, because I do take so many risks, because I am so out there, it's really helpful and beneficial to me, to this incarnation, Dave, to have a very stable long term relationship with my wife, who is the steady constant in my life when everything else around me is changing. And so I think it's also understanding really who you are as a person and going, hey, what do I want? What is it that I'm looking for?
Yeah, and it's like those questions. It's like, what do I want? What am I looking for? That we don't ask enough. I feel nowadays, it's we don't spend too much thinking about and too much time thinking about the future or what's next or what's in store or what would I like to be in store or what would I like my future to look like, whether that's with somebody or not. It's a lot of these questions. It's a lot of people and we always say to be in the present, but if you stay too much in the present and you don't ever think about the future, it's definitely it's good to have an idea as to the direction you want to head. Because if you're just in the moment, you're most likely your hormones and a better judgment isn't going to be on your side. So it's always good to be aligned, something, have some sort of north star compass. And for me, it's trying to figure out which compass to follow has been kind of my issue. At least last year was my issue until I mean, I told you before we hit record, I finally started getting serious and locking in on just one. But being young, it's like there's a bunch of North Stars that you could follow and not knowing which one to follow because you can't, if you chase two rabbits, you won't catch one. Right. And so it's like, you have to kind of figure out where is it that I want to head down. And so I wanted to kind of segue now into today's conversation. I think that's a perfect segue. So you got into your business, your entrepreneurship world in your early 20s, and you figured it out. And now you're at a point in your life where you're helping other people figure it out. And you have this topic called conscious capitalism. A lot of people, when they think capitalism, especially I feel like a lot of people my age are kind of being indoctrinated to think that capitalism is a bad thing, to think that capitalism is evil, and they want to take this moral high ground and think that, oh, I don't make that much money, so I'm clearly a better person, when in all reality, and I mentioned this in a couple episodes before, it's like the thought of only making enough money to feed yourself is extremely selfish. Because if you only have enough money to feed yourself, you can't help support the people around you beyond your immediate circle, right? You can't help your friends, you can't help your maybe your cousins or aunts. And let's say maybe you don't want to help your friends or your cousins or aunts or extended family. Well, you can't help that charity that you support. Like, you can't help the people that are hungry. You can't help the president because you only have enough money to provide to keep your own lights on, right? You can't help anyone else. So the thought of not having money is actually extremely selfish. So I wanted to hear what's your thoughts on what is conscious capitalism? Actually, this is my first time hearing that term aside from when we first spoke. So for anyone that wants to know what it is, and let us know, and what are your thoughts on capitalism in general?
Yeah. So let's this is one of my favorite things to talk about, John. So let's get into it, okay? So first, we have to understand that capitalism is an economic system. So it's about how we do our economy. There is another piece, and this is what most people are actually railing against. They just don't know it. The other piece is how our government regulates the economic system. So when people say things like, oh, I really love the Scandinavian model, Denmark, Norway, Finland, Sweden, they are all capitalistic societies. In fact, Norway has more billionaires with a B per capita than the US. They have more business owners per capita than the US. And they have universal basic income, universal preschool, universal paid university all through your post grad. They have all these really lovely social nets that help people get where they want to go. And at the same time, they're very, 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 dare I say, even more so than us, capitalistic in how they do things. So, first, you have to delineate okay, there's the economic system, and then there's the governmental, how they regulate this. And so, when people say, I'm against capitalism, it automatically triggers a conversation. What is capitalism in your mind? And
Hmm.
then they have to go through the process of saying, well, I don't think that any one person should be able to accrue so much wealth on the backs of someone else. And I say, right. So, what would you like to do with that person? They often talk about taxing them very, very heavily. That is a path. There are other paths as well. So, in Norway, what they'll do is they'll say, hey, listen, if you make $84,000 a year, that's not a ton of money. If you make $84,000 a year, everything you make over 84, if you're an employee, is taxed at 90%. It's a high tax rate. But again, get lots of stuff that's covered by the government. However, if you are a business owner, you're taxed at 35% across the board. So from the first dollar you make to the 10 billionth dollar you make, it's taxed at a flat 35%. So what they're doing in Norway is they're giving equity away in the businesses so that more people are taxed at a flatter rate. It's creating more ownership, it's creating more equity in the system, and it's allowing people to make a lot more money.
Hmm.
So, when you start to think about, hey, what could be done to create more equality? It's not just taxing a big amount for those people. It's also thinking creatively about how could we actually create equity in a system that is built in some ways on inequity, right? So conscious capitalism is the idea, very simply. So that's my thoughts on capitalism.
Yeah.
We don't have a better model right now. And when we talk about communism or socialism, what ends up happening when I have these conversations with people that really espouse those beliefs, by the way, my undergrad was in philosophy. I studied communism, socialism, capitalism as a philosophical exercise through multiple semesters. So I understand enough about these concepts to talk about them. If you look at communism and socialism, what breaks down is people believe everyone's just going to get paid the same. There's no meritocracy to it. Therefore, that's going to be better for everyone. And the thing that I always love to highlight is it sounds good until you, John, are
Hmm.
told you can't do a podcast. We need you to go dig coal in mines. Why? Because we're allotting you to go do that as the government. That's what we need you to do. You don't get to do this. There are these things that happen when you change economic systems, and traditionally, how governments run those is autocratic. It's not helpful. There's always going to be the haves and the have nots, and they create those in
Define
these systems.
autocratic really quickly. Define autocratic for anyone that may not know, because you lost me a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So an autocratic society. okay, or an autocracy, is this idea that there is a ruler who has absolute power and they're not really concerned with the people's wishes or opinions. So what we saw in the Soviet Union was autocratic governments throughout all of the Iron Curtain, meaning you could have a brilliant idea for a business, and if the government didn't like it, if they didn't see the merit in it, this is what's so funny. It's always about meritocracy. It's just about who we democratize it towards, right? Are we going to say, hey, listen, the individual has merit or the collective has merit, which really means the governmental bureaucracy has merit, right? And so this is the tension to be maintained. My contention is that the best economic solution that we have available to us at the moment is capitalism. And the way to bring capitalism where we want it to go is to make capitalism conscious. So, when we talk about conscious capitalism, to define that, there's where we are right now, John. I'm sitting in my office. You're sitting in your office. We're doing a podcast. We're separate entities. I have my own thoughts that are going on. You have your own thoughts. There are other people that are doing other things around us all over the world, and they're all individually doing it. So, on one level of existence, that's real. Like, that's absolutely a real thing that's going on. To bring in the consciousness means that I also have to realize there's another level, there's another plane of thinking, there's another plane of reality that's happening at the exact same time. We all live. Every person that has ever lived has lived on this planet, and we've only got one. So I also have to realize that that's true, and that what I do in the environment, how I spend my dollars, where I spend my dollars, if I save them, how I treat my staff, how I treat you, how I treat the barista at the coffee shop, that actually has a dynamic ripple effect on the globe and on society at large. And in a third level, I have to understand that we are all interconnected, right? Like there's no separating you and me. We're the same. In some ways, we are the exact same being living on this interconnected planet in an interconnected solar system in an interconnected universe, right? And anything that I do directly impacts you. And all three of these levels are real and they're happening at the same time. And so if I'm going to do capitalism consciously, it means that I recognize I can't just take and take and take and take and take for myself. If I have the ability, the drive, and the privilege, I have all three, then it's my universal responsibility to raise the tide for all boats. So last year, we gave out $500,000 in inflation raises only. Then we gave performance raises on top of that. And we did that without me taking a single dime more than I took the previous year. Why? Am I some awesome guy? No, I'm just a person that understands that there's no difference between you and I. And so conscious capitalism says, hey, listen, I'm going to make tons of money. I'm going to be just fine. My family's taken care of. How can I also take care of my staff, their families, and the families of the clients and customers and students that we serve?
Yeah, and you have tons of different points throughout that I definitely want to come across. The first one that's coming to mind right now is the idea of like what communism and socialism, and the idea I believe, like personally, that they're not the best idea is because it kind of disincentivizes people to be competent. It disincentivizes people to want to work hard and become actually good at anything. Because if and this is an issue that I see with a lot of people, the equity, pushing the equity thing. It's like not equity as like equity in a company, but it's like if I'm working hard, I become very good. Person B sits on the couch, doesn't go the extra mile. That's like you can't expect Kobe Bryant to make the same amount of money that a high schooler makes, right? It's you can't. It's there's different levels to this game. And there's everything in life that we do, there's a hierarchy in everything, in every plane of dimension, every plane of field, every business, everything. There's always a hierarchy. And there always will be hierarchies that we're good in and that we excel in if we choose to, cultivate that skill or whatever we need or talent that to succeed in that plane. Or and there's going to be a bunch of different planes and hierarchies that we are at the bottom of the totem pole. For example, I can't sing. That's just it, right? I will never be at the top of that hierarchy. I will never be a great singer, right? No matter how much I practice, I'll always be mid tier, even if I got professional training, right? But I know for example, in this podcasting space that I'm doing, I'm trying to scale and grow up this hierarchy myself in real time. So it's like I know that I was telling you that I got close to, at this point in time, 90 interviews scheduled for this year. Why am I going so hard? Because I want to get more reps in so I can shrink the time that it takes for me to gain experience and hyper speed my progression in this journey. And that's nothing bad about that. I just want a little bit more, right? And you can't label someone as a bad person for wanting a little bit more than the next guy. And how they get rewarded on that, I believe that money is, and I got this from someone that I interviewed actually, but I love the way of saying money is a token of appreciation. So if someone is to get more money, they're just appreciated more. It doesn't mean that they're a bad person. They're probably just appreciated more. They may be sleazy and get it out of people, but money is just it's a bartering tool, and it's a token of appreciation. And for someone to be labeled as a bad person, and it always says, "Oh, they built that off the backs of others," but it's if they didn't build that, then those others wouldn't have anything to have to work for. And then it's like it's one of those like the chicken or the egg type of thing. Well, yeah, maybe he has a bunch of employees or she has a bunch of employees, but also is now all those employees, they have a bunch of stable jobs that they don't have to worry about keeping lights on. They don't have to worry about overhead. They don't have to worry about any of these things that you kind of it's the life as an entrepreneur is very restless because when you have your days off, it's hard to turn off that switch in your mind, especially when starting off. Because I'm still in the beginning of my journey, so it's like it'll never stop for me. And it's like I know in the future that's something that's not going to serve me, but for the time being, it's like leveraging that to get to where I need to get to, so that I then can start giving back. And as you said, helping others. And it kind of reminds me of this quote. You mentioned a lot of great points. So it's like, sorry if I'm spitballing you a little bit, but
Great.
you mentioned there's this one point you mentioned how there's three different planes that we have to realize. The first plane is that everything we do affects us, and then the world around us, and then even higher level has they were all interconnected. And it reminded me of like 2 points. The first is a friend told me in the conversation after the gym. I'm working out one day. It's like we all are all the center of our own universe, right? So there's 8 billion people. We're all the center of our own world, but we're not the center of the world, right? So it's like realizing that, like, yeah, we are the sun in our own world essentially. Everything revolves around us, but it revolves around us for only us, because for the greater thing, it revolves around something else much larger than us. And realizing that we're only about, if everyone knows 100 people, right, we're only about 5 connections or 6 connections, I believe, away from being connected from the entire world. And with social media nowadays, a lot of people have at least 100 followers, so it's like indirectly you are connected to virtually everyone. So as I said, I mentioned a ton of different thoughts. So I didn't know which direction, but I try to hit everything that you kind of mentioned. You
That's
mentioned a
great.
lot of great points. I want to ask you, when I know you have a background in philosophy, but how did this thought process even come together? How did you, because you took all these different pieces from all these different places and kind of like meshed it into one core, I guess, philosophy, which is the conscious capitalism idea. Like, how did you come to that and put all these different things together?
Yeah, great question, man. So I grew up in my dad was in the Air Force, my mom is a nurse. My dad is still a pilot, flies for American Airlines. I grew up in conservative circles. I grew up going to conservative churches. And there's a lot from my experiences that wasn't helpful from that time. And there are things that were helpful. And some of the things that were really helpful, very few people know this, John. I'm actually an ordained pastor, which makes me laugh a lot now. A lot of the things that I learned though was it taught me to look outside of my experiences. It really I had some experiences where we would go do construction projects for people that couldn't afford them, that lived below the poverty line in states that were 15, 16-hour drives away from where I was as a high school, junior high kid. And it opened my eyes to the reality that there are people that are really struggling in this country, around the globe. And so it gave me the sense of, we have the ability to do things. We have the ability to change the world for the better. So that was kind of the seeds that were planted. As I was about to launch my first business, this is why this is funny, John, that I'm an ordained pastor. I became an atheist for like 9 months, which is just about right to me, I think. So in that atheism space, I started to look for ways to reintegrate my childhood upbringing in Christianity. And how do I engage with God, the universe, whoever she is, right? How do I do that thing? And so I came across this teacher named Ram Dass. And as I was reading Ram Dass, who, his born name is Richard Alpert, he was born in the 1930s in the States. He was a professor at Harvard. And like many people, he's like got lost in acquiring all the things, right? He went full on unconscious capitalism. He was like, how many things can I get to soothe my anxiety? How many things can I get to make me feel like a good boy? These are his words, not mine. And then he ends up taking this very extravagant trip to the Far East. He goes through Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India. This was back in the 60s. And when he goes to India, he ends up meeting this Indian saint who changes his life. And part of that story was his understanding of, coming to an understanding of how everyone is connected and everything is connected, and all that. So for me, when it comes to the conscious capitalism stuff, it's so funny, brother. I point back to this Jewish Harvard professor who lost it all, who started following a Indian saint who would tell him about Christ all the time, and taught him Hinduism and Buddhist traditions. And that's really what's driving me at this point, is it's an understanding again that all three things are true, that we're totally separate, and yet we're also completely interconnected, like irreversibly interconnected. It's all one thing. And so because of that reality, because of my own spiritual journey, it's really led me to the place of understanding in a deep seated way, like, this is what I've got going on and this is what I'm up to.
Yeah, I love that you shared that story because I feel like a lot of us are blindly believing. And for me, I was blindly believing up until 12th grade when my English teacher, he was a philosophy nerd, for lack of a better way to put it, and he would occasionally go off curriculum. And one day we were looking into Plato's allegory of the cave, and we were reflecting on it, and he was like, "Are you blindly believing, or do you have actual faith?" And up until that point, I never thought about it. I started going to church
Mm,
around third grade, and it was my family didn't go to church. They were Catholic, so like during like Thanksgiving and stuff like that, they would always do like family prayers in unison, and I don't know how, but they would all like pray in sync. And I never seen any of them in the church, but somehow they knew every prayer word for word. And it's like, but I grew up going to a Christian church, and for me, up until that point, I never really questioned. And it's not questioning God in like a, I don't think he exists, but more so questioning like a genuine curiosity. And
yeah.
now I could say that I have actual faith because
Mm,
I didn't really dive too deep into other religions, but I looked into like Buddhism and Taoism was another good one, and there was another couple. But I learned I seen these different viewpoints from other areas, and despite that, I still find myself back serving Christ. And now I
oh
know
wow.
it's like I've reached another level in my faith because it's something that I've awakened almost in a way to being aware, and it's like that old saying, "You don't know when you don't know," right? Ignorance is
Yep.
bliss, right?
Yep.
But it's like it reminds me. There we go. That's the thing I'm looking for. Not ignorance is bliss. Curiosity killed the cat, but the answer brought him back, right?
Yep.
That is the saying that everyone forgets the latter part of that. And so for me, it's like having that genuine faith. And you mentioned the point of the high tides raises all boats. I wanted to ask you about, and you probably know a little bit about this, but the lobster in a cage, right? If one lobster tried to escape the cage, the lobsters pull him back in, and then eventually he didn't stop. And as soon as you throw a new lobster in, they'll try to escape the cage, but then everyone will pull them back from before, and it's like this never-ending loop. So I want to ask you, how does one become conscious? How does one break free from that collective consciousness, regardless of whether we want to use that for entrepreneurship or just for our personal life? But how do we break free from that so that we could go on and reach these heights that most people can only imagine?
Yeah. So I think so how do you become conscious? I really recommend that you read things outside of your comfort zones and that you practice prayer or meditation. Here's what's beautiful about prayer and meditation. They are both universally scientifically proven to be beneficial to your mental, physical health. So atheists, deeply religious people, they all agree on this piece. And it doesn't matter if you pray or if you just meditate without words, it does not matter. You get the same benefits. So have some sort of practice where you're praying or meditating. That will help elevate your consciousness above what's going on right here and now. Then, when it comes to how do you break free, you have to identify who are you? Not who your parents want you to be, not who your friends expect you to be, not who your girlfriend, your boyfriend, not who they expect you to be. Who are you? Right? And this is one of the gifts sometimes that you can get from books. So there is a book that's sitting here on my desk that I'm rereading because I needed to remember who I
Hmm.
am. And it's called Relentless by Tim Grover. This is the
Hmm.
guy that trained. Do you know who he is, John? You
Basketball
may.
coach, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So he trained Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Dwayne Wade. Now he coaches CEOs and all sorts of other people, and he has three different terms for people that are good, great, and unreal at what they do. So in his book Relentless, he talks about you have coolers. Coolers are the first tier. They're good. They're the people that, hey man, I want to show up and do a good job for you, John. If I'm working on your team, tell me what to do. I'm going to try and do as good as I can. But to use a basketball term, they don't want to take the last shot. Don't pass them the ball, right?
Yeah.
They want to be a role player. Let me help you, John, achieve your goals. I just want to be good. Then you've got the closers. The closers are the people that want to be great, okay? But they're not the people that are going to take the last shot unless you pass the ball to them. So the closers are going to work hard. They're going to try and keep up with the highest level people, and they're not going to do whatever it takes, right? So again, they'll take the last shot if you pass it to them, but they're not going to want the ball. Jordan wanted the ball. Kobe wanted the ball. Last second shot, right? The last one is cleaners. Cleaners are the people that are like, I want to be the best, the best, the best. I want to take the last shot. You give the ball to me. We're going to make it work. Not only are we going to make it work, we're going to win, right? The helpful thing to me is to read this book and to remind myself that there are other cleaners in the world because I am a cleaner. I'm somebody that'll do whatever it takes. Whenever things are not going well, they call me in. All of a sudden, they go well. I have this problem now, John, because I've been doing this for so long. I will step into a business. I can market the day that I step in to the day that things turn around. It takes less than 30 days now. Literally, I'll step in, and all of a sudden, within 30 days, we've got more leads coming in. We've made more sales than we made the past month, usually by 50%, sometimes more. We're fulfilling on more client or student needs instantly because when I step in, man, it's bringing that Kobe Bryant, that Michael Jordan, that Dwayne Wade sort of mentality of I don't care what it takes. I'm going to get it done. So part of the way that you get out of the pot of lobsters is you just start to realize you're not a freaking lobster, man. I'm
Mm.
different than you. You all may look like me. You may all think that I think like you. I don't think like you at all. And so when people try and pull you back, you literally get upset, man. Like I have not in a mean way, but I have in a very kind, conscious way told people like, look, man, I'm not going to hang out with you as much. Like, I love you. We'll always be boys. Like, I'm here for you if you need something. I've got to go do this thing. And some people, when I've been really nice about that, still got offended and don't want to talk to me because they saw that as me rejecting them as a human being. And I was like, no, this has nothing to do with you. This has everything to do with where I'm going. And I don't have time to invest in this relationship with you because I only invest in my relationship with my wife, my kids, and high players, people that are going to help me get better because I'm on a mission. And I love you and we can hang, but I'm just not going to be there all the time. And some people don't get that. And that's not your fault. That's not my fault. That's on them. My wife has this beautiful saying. She said, tell people the God's honest truth about who you are and what you're up to, and how they respond to it. That's on them. So yeah, I think that that's how you get out of the lobster pot, brother.
Yeah, that's some amazing advice, and just to apply that to my own life, like I've been in a stage where I've left a group chat with all my boys. I've been a while ago. I stopped playing Xbox, maybe like 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Once I went to college, I stopped playing Xbox for the most part, and then from there, once I got into entrepreneurship, and I didn't intentionally want to distance myself, but then I started working 70 hours. It's not like you have too much time when you're doing that. So from there, it and that distance never kind of closed. And not to say I'm so much further ahead in life than they are, but just it's just we never really got back together in terms of how it was. And I was remember one day I was telling my friend, and he's into music, and I was looking at him, and I was just like, bro, like literally, you said that you wanted to be a music artist, right? I can't support you if you're not dropping songs. Because for me to support you and you to say that you want to do this, but you're not doing this, you're pretty much you're wasting my support, right? I'm pouring into you. You're not taking action on anything. You're not doing anything. You say you want to be a rapper. You say you want to do this. You say you want to do X, Y, Z. And I'm kind of speaking directly to him right now through you, but it's
Yep.
like I can't go out of my way to support you and tell people about you because now you're just tarnishing my name. Because now you're just dragging my name through the mud. Because it's almost in a way it's disrespectful and selfish to let down the people that believe in you because you don't want to take action, right? And so like I have someone told that to me, like, John, like we all believe in you. Like the most selfish thing you could do is not make us proud, is not show us that we were right. And so it's like, for lack of another way to a better way to put it, it's like once you start sharing your vision and dreams with other people and people start buying into that vision, it's like for you to not follow through on that. And it may slightly change. Cause like for me in my life, it's like this time last year, I was convinced I was gonna be the top selling realtor. I was convinced I was gonna be the best in the office. But it's like you talk to me now, it's like if you're not my best friend or someone in my circle, I'm just gonna refer you out and get a referral fee. I'm not gonna do anything real estate related because that's not my main focus. And I have so many people like I had this one lady tell me, like, hey John, I'm a career coach and you know, I would just suggest, that focusing on real estate, even if it's just for one thing, but it's like they don't understand that one, it's like money was never the end goal. So a 20,000 commission check in the large scheme, the grand scheme of things, that is chump change. That is absolutely nothing to where I plan on taking this vision that I have that's been placed inside of me, and being okay because some people, especially when you're an entrepreneur, unless you know your first business is the one, right? You're usually gonna be shifting, pivoting a little bit here and there, and so it's like people will tell you like that know your past you what you should be doing based off that person and not being okay with knowing where your future you is headed. Not everyone understands that and not everyone will see that because God didn't bless them with that vision of where you're headed. So unless you go out of your way to explain that to them, which usually is pointless because you don't have to explain yourself to everybody, but for the ones that do understand, it's like they'll understand and be like, oh John, you're doing this, I'm here for you. I'll back you up. And then there's some people who are like, oh, John, but you had such a great opportunity here. It's like, yeah, but that's not the opportunity for me anymore. And then like just focusing all in on the vision I have inside of me. And I kind of lost my train of thought. That's like I'm kind of too deep into
I
this
love it.
conversation. But long story short, it's like being able to be comfortable, as you said, realizing that I'm not a lobster, right? And
Right.
yeah, I may be ostracized, I may be exiled, I may be alone outside of the cage, but in all reality, once you get out of there, it's like you see all the other people that also broke free. You just couldn't
Yeah.
see them from the inside. And now it's like you get into this new space where I've been able to meet so many amazing people, such as yourself, such as these people that I met at the conferences and masterminds and stuff like that. That would have never been able to come across had I just stayed in the cage, had I not spent time trying to discover myself.
Bingo.
So I kind of want to flip it back on you a little bit. Well, once you discover yourself, right, how do you apply that into the business world, especially as a young person? Because money is something that is very, very tempting. And when you're coming out of scarce giving, a lot of people just say, "Hey, I want to start this side hustle so I can get some more cash." Like, how do you orient yourself in the beginning so that your trajectory can be a lot more in alignment with whatever your purpose may be versus just a little side hustle or a little extra cash or an extra source of income to start off.
Yeah, I think that a little side hustle is right for a lot of people, man.
Mhm.
A lot of people don't have the drive that you have. A lot of people don't have the drive that I have. They don't have the, to your point about having the ability. They don't have the God-given ability to do what you or I do. And so a side hustle is the right call for them. Now, if someone's like, "Man, I really want to do something big,"
Yeah.
and I'm tempted by the money. I mean, honestly, I'll just tell you my story. I didn't take a penny from my first grown-up business for 2 years. Not a cent. Not one penny. I put in time, I sold things, I fulfilled on things, and I gave all my money to my business partner who was full-time, and I worked another full-time job for the first 18 months. And then for another 6 months, I worked the business full-time, lived off the little bit of savings that I had, and I made it work. And then I took a $2,500 a month salary for the next year, right? So, like, it's possible to chase your dreams, get where you want to go if you decide to be disciplined about it. And the money will always come. And this is something I tell staff all the time. Don't chase money. You can always go get more money. Chase good management. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I'm not an entrepreneur, but I really like John. He's got a good vibe. I like all the guests he has, but I want to work for somebody else. Great, man. Chase great management. Chase people that are going to take care of you the way that you want to be taken care of, that are going to respect and lead you in ways that are going to be helpful. If you're listening to this and you're like John and myself, you're like, man, I want to get after it. Let's go, let's go, let's go. The money will always come to you. Okay. I know that tomorrow I could throw something out and I could make 50 grand tomorrow and I could just pocket it all. Or I could take a long term approach and I can help people grow and develop and I can keep building my personal brand and I'll get better. And I think one of the things that you have to recognize, especially John, because your audience is designed to be younger people in their 20s and teens. Man, I'm not who I was 5 years ago.
Mhm.
I'm 10 times better now. I just tweeted this out last night to somebody. I'm 10 times better now than I was 5 years ago. Compared to 10 years ago when I started my first business, I'm 100 times better than that guy, right? It's not this small increment, it's huge exponentials. And the same is true for my personal spiritual life. Dude, if I would have talked to the guy that I was 15 years ago when I was 21, he would think that I'm in trouble. He would go, "You believe what? You think how? What are you talking about? That's crazy." The fact of life is this: your 20s are figuring out who the hell you are. That's the whole gambit of your 20s. Like every single person, that's what they're doing. In your 30s, you understand who you are and you're coming to terms with what that means and how you interact with the world. In your 40s, you realize that you don't care what anyone else thinks about who you are or what you're up to. In your 50s, you try and give back. And in your 60s, you realize no one thinks of you at all. And these are just things that scientifically have been proven over time. And so as you're engaging with, hey, how do I build this business? What do I do? You've got tons of time to make money. Sharpen your skills, practice every day, do the work. I love that you said, John, man, I'm working like 70 hours a week. I don't have time. Yeah, you're practicing, man. You're freaking Kobe Bryant. that's just in the gym. You know what I mean? That's what it is, bro. You're Kobe Bryant. You're Patty Mahomes. You're in the gym every day. Patrick Mahomes. This is the days after the AFC Championship game. He said that he was going to training to work on his high ankle sprain that he had a week before. He was going for 4 or 5 hours a day because typically that injury takes 6 weeks to heal. So he was getting treatment 4 or 5 hours a day to try and get that ankle right so he could go play in a game a week later. That's what you're doing right now, John. You're putting in the time, the energy, and the effort, and it's going to pay out. So don't worry about making the big money right now. To anyone that's listening to this, John, I know you're not doing this, but to anyone that's listening to this, the money will come, man. The money will come. Put in the practice, put in the work.
That is some amazingly solid advice. And Dave, I'm sad that this conversation can't go on forever, but we definitely hit on a ton of amazing points. The idea of just becoming conscious, breaking free from the cage, applying that into entrepreneurship, why capitalism isn't actually evil when done correctly. We talked about just putting in the rep. We talked about so many like just really in-depth points. It's one of those episodes that you got to sit down and listen to. You can't play it back in your headphones at the gym. You got to really sit down and listen to this one. Where can we connect with you? Where can we find you at if we wanted to get in touch with what you got going on and just follow you and your journey?
Yeah, man. I love the conversation, by the way. You can find me on any social media platform at Real Dval, RealDval. And then anyone that's listening to this, if you're a business owner and you want to get better, I actually have a free e-course that I put together. I usually do a workshop. It's $2,500 to attend, but I want to give it to your listeners for free, John. If you go to davevalentine.co/OO for outrageous offer, I take people through this e-course where I teach them how to create outrageous offers that help their businesses scale quickly. And it's a $2,500 value that's free to your listeners. So go check it out and enjoy.
And appreciate that. And now it's time for our famous 5 questions, how we end every single episode. Question number one, and I always love asking people that are philosophically minded these questions. So I'm curious to see what your answers are going to be. But question number one is, what is the most impactful lesson you've learned in life?
This too shall pass. For the
Oh,
good,
I
the
love that
bad, the
one.
ugly. Yeah.
I love that one. Okay. What is the most admirable trait a person can have?
They don't quit. Yeah, man, they don't quit. Because it works in relationships too, right? Like my wife and I have had moments in our relationship where it's been like, do you want to give up? Do I want to give up? And the answer is always no, even though things are hard. Not quitting's huge.
If you had to change someone's life with one book, which book would you recommend?
I happen to have it right here. Ram Dass's book, The Grist for the Mill. Grist for the Mill is what it's called. It's the first book that I ever read of his, and I read it 7 years ago now. Absolutely changed my life. Highly recommend it.
What is the legacy that you're trying to leave behind?
We have to change the fundamental nature of what it means to do work in the United States and in the West.
And for anyone, no matter where they are right now, wanted to take the first step to start their walk to wealth, what would you suggest that first step be?
Do a vision board. Like where do you see yourself 3 years from now? What does it feel like? What does it look like? What does it smell like? What is around you? What are the physical sensations on your fingertips, on your skin? Do you have different clothing? Do you have different bed sheets? Like what do you have? Play it all out. Once you do that, it's going to give so much clarity to where you're going and what you're up to.
Dave, it was a genuine pleasure to
Oh,
have
I
you on the
love this,
show.
John. Thank you for having
I
me, bro.
really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm excited to just to stay connected with you and see,
Bro.
how we can collaborate in the future. And I know we got some super big things in store for the future. So thanks again for hopping on. Thanks again for just dropping the bombs that you did for my listeners. And I know for a fact that you definitely enlightened my perspective. So for anyone listening, you probably definitely shifted their paradigm. So thanks again for just hopping on and providing the value that you did.
Thanks for having me, brother.